2 separate lectures, and this is a pretty good follow-up on it all. In America recently, there's been a dentist based in North Carolina, and you can look him up on the internet. There's already controversy, there's already a lot of pretty damning information about him, but what he's discovered is very, very interesting, and if you go to his website, if it's still up, he guarantees to cure you of breast cancer within 90 days or all your money is refunded. And not only that, but he guarantees it won't come back again. Now, this is a pretty radical statement to make on an internet website, especially in America. But the gist of it is very, very interesting, and you'll see how this segues into Harry's talk in a second. What he's discovered being a dentist is something a lot of dentists in the alternative dental networks around the country know, is that all your teeth are actually aligned on acupuncture meridians which link to a different organ or part of your body. And it's been well known and observed. Can the Ormus people please stop talking behind there, or I'm going to get the gaffer tape gun out. Dennis? Thanks. I can hear you from here, I'm sure the audience can. So, what we've known for a long time is there's a link between tooth health, especially root canals, bad fillings, abscesses under key teeth, and the related organ in your body on the acupuncture meridians. But what has been discovered more recently, and this really impacts on cancer cases, is that there is a lot of undetected and undiagnosed, micro abscesses, pockets of micro infection which do not show up under a visual dental examination. You might go to the dentist for a regular checkup and he might look in your mouth. He will not detect visually pockets of micro infection. Also, an X-ray will not pick up pockets of micro infection because they're too small. But what is happening is a lot of people with their modern lifestyle, their processed foods, their half-done dental work, crowns, root canals, etc., these pockets of infection are building up, and they're continually pouring the most incredible toxins you can imagine straight into your bloodstream. It's like getting a hypodermic needle, putting the worst pus bacteria that doesn't need oxygen, and injecting it straight into your veins continuously, 24 hours a day. Once that's addressed, he has found that all his patients, this is back to the dentist, all his patients are totally reversing with breast cancer, and he finds these pockets of infection in 100% of breast cancer cases that he scans for. So this is stuff which we're going to be looking at putting in NEXUS in the future. But one of the things that came to my mind straight away was, how can you detect this? Now, this dentist in North Carolina uses a type of thermal imagery, so that it shows up in colour coding. But when I found about this, I contacted Harry Oldfield immediately, and I said, Harry, are you aware of this? Harry, being the on-the-spot man that he is, was already aware of it and had been in consultation with Dr. Bob Gamble, I believe,
Absolutely.
in Australia.
Dr. Robert Gamble.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting research coming out, and a lot of this, in my opinion, is following on from the research that Harry has conducted in terms of being able to scan the human bioorganism on different energy frequencies to detect things we're not normally aware of. And now that I've successfully got all the Ormus people in here and got them to shush up, I would like to hand you over to Dr. Harry Oldfield. Please give him a big warm welcome back to Australia.
Hello, NEXUS Australia. It's wonderful to be back with you. And for the guys out there who it's their first time here, it was my first time a year ago, and I know how you're feeling. And believe you me, all those rumours are true. Also, I'd just like to mention with my friend Robert Gamble that he's Australian, he's based in Sydney, and there's a wonderful practice that's taking on board a lot of the research that Duncan was just mentioning. So please, look that up on the internet, and you can get contact obviously through NEXUS. For Robert. Speaking of the man himself, you'll be seeing we were doing last year a PIP, Polycontrast Interference Photography conference with himself and his colleagues, and I was imparting as much as I could in the time period. And it was a day conference, and during that day we were teaching them certain PIP techniques, and he has the most wonderful office den at his home where we were holding the conference, and certain strange phenomena started to appear in his den. And we photographed all this with the special camera, special photography. And for those of you that are interested in orbs, yes, spirit orbs, etc., you're going to be seeing Robert's home versions. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to make a start. And are we okay with the... Yes, we are. And just wanted to show you that behind every reasonably good man, there's always a brilliant woman. And that's my partner, Evie, in the back there. But without her, none of this work would be possible. And I just want to thank her, first and foremost, for everything. PIP stands for Polycontrast Interference Photography, and I'll just explain to the newcomers what that's all about. It's a way of looking at invisible energy. Now, when I look at you out there, I'm not seeing you at all, and it's not because I've got a great big spotlight in my eye. I can still see you in front. It's because I'm only seeing the light reflected off you. Okay, that's going into my eye, it's going to the back of the retina, down the optic nerve, and through synaptic pathways, it's reaching the occipital cortex at the back of my brain. And I'm actually seeing an inverted image in the retina upside down, but the brain turns it the right way up. That's how we see normally, okay? But there are people with special gifts of vision, they're called clairvoyants, sensitives, who actually see energy around people, auric fields. Is a more familiar term. And I was fascinated with this because years ago I got into something called Kirlian photography research. And that was back in the early 1970s. And with that, I actually duplicated some of the first researchers' work with something called phantom leaf effects. And we were able to see energy fields around leaves that had been partially cut. And later on, with the PIP system, we did it with limbs that had been severed from people in automobile accidents and factory accidents, etc., and legs. So there is a pre-physical subatomic energy field on which physical molecules are strung. Okay? I said this in my first book back early 1980s in Dark Side of the Brain, written with Roger Coghill, past colleague and friend, and in that we stipulated the theory of this subatomic energy matrix, and that was long, long before string theory ever came into being in the quantum physics world. But what we didn't do is have the linear algebra to prove it, okay? We still don't to a certain extent, but we do have the photographic evidence and the, obviously, the testimonial and experimental evidence of things even done in Faraday cages. But thank you. Okay, well, you can't get too much there. And here we've got some interesting experiments. First of all, PIP is a way of, with photography and computer programming, of seeing how people with gifts of vision see. Because the light that I've just described has to travel through your energy on the way in and off and out of your energy on the way out. And there's changes in that light that happens as it moves through your energy field or even an environmental field. And connected with this, we have a young man I experimented with quite recently, a young psychic surgeon, healer, called Gary Mannion. He's actually touring Australia at this moment in time. And for those of you who want to know what he's doing and where, I think he's going to be in Newcastle soon and things like that. He's absolutely fantastic for what he does. I've tested him quite thoroughly at my university base and found him to be a 100% genuine phenomenon. Now what you're seeing here are meridians that are traveling down his arms. They're acupuncture meridians. Energy that's flying around him and above him. But also this device over here, it's called a mind mirror. And it's an LED matrix on which shows the activity left and right side of the brain. And it's a very old instrument, an analog instrument, not digital. And it was put together in the mid-1970s by Maxwell Cade, an old friend of mine, and a brilliant engineer he worked with called Jeff Blundell. And that was produced by Audio Electronics UK, and absolutely a wonderful device which I've used extensively in my research. And one thing that Gary showed when he was in healing mode, and during the healing, as you're going to see in a moment, were great changes in his brainwave patterns when he was in healing mode, but also, I hope we'll be able to show you this, we've had a little bit of trouble with the video, multiple brainwave images on the one device. So it wasn't just his brainwaves we were seeing other brainwaves as well. And he works with people in the spiritual world, guides and other healers. And I think we saw evidence of that actually happening. Yeah, and here, another mode with Gary, this is PIP again, but in a different filter mode. Look at some higher frequencies. We saw this globe of light that used to hover above him when he was in healing mode. Oh, by the way, can you all hear me at the back? Okay. Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, good, good, good. Now here, these beautiful legs here actually belong to my partner, Evie. No more to be said about that. But they're not perfect, excuse me, darling, for saying so, because she has interrupted meridian flows, yes, secret's out now, in her right leg. Can you see that pink down there? Well, the energy's not flowing right there, and she has a little bit of a dodgy ankle. Well, did, until Gary here was being used, she was being used in an experiment during the healing process. And she's not looking very happy there, because there's actually a pain actually happening in her right side of her neck as well, which he works on. And he starts to absorb there, with the red going in his right hand, the negative energy from her neck. Get the close-up there, as it's absorbed into his hand. He then sort of transforms it and then ejects it from the auric field. So I just realised I've got a laser here. Look at that. Wonderful high technology. Okay, so now we can see how much of congestion has been removed. For those that are not too familiar with the way I work, I've only got 1.5 hours to put 30-odd years of work into this, so please excuse me if I go at lightning speed. Here's the energy that was hovering above him at the time of the healing. He also had a lot of psychic activity there, and something called the third eye, or the Bhara chakra. Our system shows up these places and these energy fields. Okay. Now, as I was describing earlier, I was also working with Robert with the PIP system, and in his office, after we'd done all the other things like looking at teeth and energies of root canals and everything, which are very bad, by the way, we saw some other interesting things. This also has a soundtrack, I believe, that also speaks for itself. How are we doing with that? Here we go. Now, look what's flying around here. Also, by the way, I really enjoy my research, and you'll hear a lot of laughter. A lot of things that I can see emanations around this picture here up on your wall. Oh! Right, draw some nail shape. Thank you. Does that mean I'm going to get more hair up there? Oh, by the way, I asked a sadhu in India, does God have a sense of humour? And he said, I hope he has, otherwise you're in trouble. Sadhu was a holy man, by the way. Oh!
Bring us that.
I love it.
Or is it humor? Yeah.
Oh!
Maybe the laughter, yeah.
Oh!
So that's another joke in that scene more from
That image that you pointed at is one Shokyu. He's an 82-year-old shaman, but totally in spirit in that image.
You see?
Yeah, totally.
That's Dr. Gamble speaking
When
now.
first I saw him as an old friend. It's wonderful being here, actually, the atmosphere and everything. I could work in here in this room 24 hours and never get tired. Is that how you feel? Right. You never discussed that with me, Rob, did you? I'm just telling you the feeling that, oh,
Totally.
Quite interested in me
Love
most
it.
of the time. Can't think why.
yes, thank you. Like he said,
Fixing my back at this moment in time.
and I think they've said thank you too. Oh no.
Okay, lovely. And I was, after standing all day, I had a lot of disturbance in my back. And these spirit orbs were paying particular attention around my back. And at the end of the day, it was like I had the back I had when I was 18-year-old. I feel more like 65 today, I'll warn you. But it's been a long morning, don't worry about it. Okay, thank you. Next. There is really something after this, I promise, ladies and gentlemen. Otherwise, I've got an apple here I'm going to be demonstrating with later, and a few other little bits and pieces. Right. You know, a funny thing happened to me today on the way to the auditorium. One request this year was that I was to demonstrate some of my newer inventions. And one invention, really, it's not new, I resurrected, was a life-saving smoke mask. Oh, by the way, I am a compulsive inventor, you know, and I just have to, I live to invent things. And it has been since I was quite young. I would like to, for example, invent a new operating system for the computer, and right away I'm going to call it Pista, because it will put people off right away, and be completely honest, and you're not going to buy it because it's absolute rubbish. Okay? And okay, back to the smoke mask. So I've just dropped on the floor, and yes, it's usually a 49 bus that goes past the window at this stage, but no flying aircraft is probably just as lucky, I suppose. Well, anyway, have you ever wondered what happens on it when aircraft catches fire? It's not very pleasant if it's on the ground, because many years ago in the 1990s at Manchester Airport, there was a very bad fire back in the UK, and most people died of smoke inhalation in that disaster. And there was also a terrible incident in China where over 200 children died in a cinema where the fire exits had been closed, they couldn't get out, and most of those had died of smoke inhalation. And this happened quite quickly in succession, these two disasters. And I decided, right, mother is the mother of invention is a necessity. And I felt it was very necessary to do something about this. Well, the only thing you can do is protection. Have protection with you. And I had this unofficially tested out by the London Fire Brigade after I invented it. And it would keep out smoke of from an average house fire for 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the density of the smoke. And basically what you do, you have this mask, and you, normally I'd use water. It should really be, down in Australia, I'm told, a beer glass. And you pour that on, and people have asked me, well, okay, Dr. Oldfield, if you're anywhere in a fire and you haven't got any water, what do? I said, well, use your own water. If you're in a fire, you're that scared that you'll produce some, don't worry. My grandfather was in the First World War, and before the proper gas mask came off, they had a kind of a canvas thing you put over your mouth, and you had to use water to prevent the gas coming through. It didn't prevent much because he still got gas by chlorine. And in emergencies, the troops used their own water if they didn't have any left in the water bottle. Anyway, well, that's activated the chemicals in there. And now I shall cover up this face of mine. Put that on. And there. You can't hear me now too much, but I assure you, if this auditorium was full of smoke, I would now be protected for 2 or 3 minutes. Now, if you cannot find an exit from a building that's burning in 3 to 5 minutes, you're not going to find the exit. So it really doesn't matter. By the way, most people... well, you know, I mean, let's face it, you've got to have a sense of humour, even in death. That's how I look at it, you know. Because life is about enjoying life, and, you know, you can't take life too seriously, including the end product. It's always nice to put it off, however. Like I would like to do something with PowerPoint. You know, the threat of death does sometimes, well, okay, you've just seen there one of my inventions. By the way, this was put into the hands of an agent in the late 1990s, and a certain British Airways, I won't mention, decided that it would add, although it was effective, it would add too much to their safety demonstration on takeoff and would delay things. And yeah, all I can say is, especially with the Spanish incident that happened some months ago, it's a very, very quick way of preserving life. And I'm putting it out there to any airline who wants to take this up. The only cost to you will be, of course, first class or business travel for me, for life, and my family, all over the world, even if your airline goes out of business. And it's yours. Okay. Fly me. Okay. The other thing, one of my older inventions, and still very much active, I hasten to add, and coming into a very new form shortly, earlier this year, we lost a dear friend of ours, Mr. Terry Green, who was my chief construction engineer, design engineer of my electronic devices. Died very suddenly in March. And we have only recently started the design production of a brand new system using the old frequencies and techniques of my electrocrystal therapy system here. And this is some of the older tubes. You can see all the colours in there are healing crystals and healing stones which pertain to every colour frequency the body needs to aid itself in recovery of a misplaced. Now, my son now, later this month, at the end of this month, will be 24, okay? And when he was younger than that, he could operate his own machine. And he'd say, "Daddy, I've got a headache." I'd say, I want Calpol, like other children get at school. I say, "Shut up." I said, you know, "Put on your machine. You know, you've got your machine there in the toy box." And he'd have to go to the toy box, get out his machine and put it on his head. And he said, "Dad, you know," I said, "How's the headache, son, after 5?" He said, "It's gone. You know, when you hurt your knee at the playground, you know, use your machine." He said, "Yes, when I get back home." And I said, "Does Calpol work as fast as that with other children?" He said, "No, Dad." And I said, "What are you complaining about?" He said, "Well, you know, I just want to be like them sometimes." Oh, children are like that. He's later changed his mind now and helps me a lot in my work. Here we have also our optical system. Let me show you a little bit of that in action. A couple of these. That's actually a visor we use for treating eyes. And over here we have something we use in the Blu-ray. These are blue topaz crystals, okay? And we can switch to another healing frequency and healing gemstone right away with a corundum or synthetic ruby. There we go. I hope you can even see that in the spotlight there, beaming away. Okay? And these we put at various frequencies on various places, especially the chakra system. And, well, gosh, how old is that now? 29 years old at the moment. Wish I could say the same. There we go. 29 years that's been around the world. And I have to say, I hope my friends Kay and Judy in the audience, and they've been here in Australia representing that for many, many years and doing some wonderful work, as well as our contemporary practitioners. I think there's nearly 20 people all together in Australia. I could be wrong with the figures. And here's the array of, shall we say, instruments, different frequencies that can be used on the machine, different places, different chakras. Sorry to go so fast, but you know, I have a lot to show you still. And speaking of crystals, there'll be a very famous crystal coming tomorrow called the Crystal Skull. And here we've got my friend Gary again, who's actually influencing crystal with his energy field. And these crystals have real energy, and they can be manipulated by people's minds, human energy field, and also by electromagnetic and optical pulses that we use in this equipment. Make it one that's plugged in. Right, you'll hear these pulses in a minute. Near the mic. Can you hear that high frequency? Okay, that's from the crystals. And that's using pulsed high frequency pulses. The other is using pulse light. Very, very special things. Here, we were at a special place in America called the Monroe Institute. And this was a huge crystal being used to project healing, distant healing, to a colleague of theirs who was in hospital, many miles away. And here I got them around the crystal with this experiment, meditating. And I'm using a zoom lens because as I got near them while they were activating the crystal, they crashed the computer program. Now, in a moment, they will synchronize themselves and pulse energy through the crystal, which you will see as a burst of white light as it gets transmitted to their friend in hospital. Okay? And then the white light is drawn back into the crystal. Watch it being drawn back into the crystal. There we go. Incidentally, the gentleman who was very seriously ill indeed and could have been died or completely paralyzed with a very serious back operation recovered at such a great pace that everyone was astonished. And he believes, and they believe, it had something to do with that pulsed energy. Now, of course, we're going to be dealing with a very wonderful crystal tomorrow, and I'm going to be looking forward. Well, I have already been invited to, shall we say, come in with some of my monitoring equipment in a private session of somebody who's invited us with the Crystal Skull. And hopefully that footage, some of that footage with their permission, and of course the owner of the Crystal Skull will be available for NEXUS and NEXUS people, of course. The other thing we explore and get from crystals, in healing sense, is sound from them. You can tune a crystal with an electromagnetic field so precisely it will begin to sing to you like a bell. And here you're listening to some very nice groups of crystals that I'm fine-tuning in a recording studio to make with this pop group, Current 93, Harry and the Crystals. Yes, indeed. I do appreciate also my fan club that was formed, and I get a Christmas card from the one girl every year, who is a little bit deaf as well. And I'm just very grateful for you listening to it. But seriously though, it has some wonderful, wonderful, tranquil and and restorative properties, depending on what track you listen to. You can also have tracks on there, gives you a great deal of energy. And I also had a lady from Germany ring up and say, "Oh, Dr. Oldfield, I'm so pleased about your crystal sounds." I said, "Well, did you like them?" She said, "No, I think they were horrible. But they got rid of our ghost in the house." There was no haunting afterwards. And I can only presume, of course, that the spirit had no taste in good music. And we also went on to do some other interesting work with the... Here we have my partner, Evie. And here, as you can see, from that right side, oh, if I get the laser here, she has a leaping auric field, quite bad. And also, look what's happening. It's very, very low energy in the environment. We did a whole series of experiments with Dr. Gamble, actually, Robert Gamble. And that was, you know, the result after she was listening to the crystals in this experiment. And she uses the crystals a lot, actually, because it's, you know, she has the sounds on an MP3, sort of a player, what they call, yes, CD players, yeah. I remember the time when radios had valves in them, by the way. I used to crowd around as a young boy around the radio set and listen to the Ovaltines. Anybody of my generation out there? Oh, good. Thank God for that. In case you think I'm telling fibs. Right, okay, and you can see a whole series here where it's all improved. Not just her neck, but the energy of the environment as well, which is absolutely wonderful. Yes, you've guessed it. The CD is also available for sale at our stand after the conference and during the whole conference. And if we run out, we will be sending more to Australia. So there we have the clear before and the clear after. And it's not just with Evie, it's with a lot of people who use our crystal sounds and our crystal instruments. Crystals are absolutely fantastic for manipulating energy of the human body and energy of the environment. And here, this is the work I did with John Reed. He has something called a Microscope, where you can actually see sort of the patterns of sound. And this was coming from our crystals. This is the patterns that it formed on his Microscope. We also processed the images through our PIP system to see if we could see some extra contrast of energy, and we did. We were able to zoom in, and we saw pockets and vortices of energy turning anti-clockwise, as you can see here sometimes, and clockwise, depending on the pitch and the frequencies used. And also we saw little things moving around which we cannot quite explain, almost like little life forms. There we go, there was one that ran across there. There are, shall we say, those of you who were here last year, I showed you footage, real footage of entities inside crystals. And you know, that is, again, that's on the last year's NEXUS video on the lectures, for those of you who are here for the first time and want to recap on anything. Got some wonderful geometric patterns for you. You remember Callum this morning, and he was showing you patterns of sound, and one with and without, one being affected by heat, okay? But if you think of this as a more complicated instrument in real time for looking at these patterns. And that's the work of John Reed, the Microscope, everyone. Now, I also have my Microscope. This is me looking at myself in my true colours early in the morning. It's not a pleasant experience, but I do it just for improvement of character. And also to give myself a good dressing down, as you can see here in my dressing gown. And with the Oldfield Filter, it breaks light up into different frequencies, similar to a prism, but much more precisely, with continuous multispectral effects. And it's very interesting because in between these wavelengths we get some very interesting phenomena. And this is what I want to go on to show you. Okay, here, this was actually done locally at a local sea establishment. And in here there's water containing wonderful life forms of seals. And there were rays coming down into the water. There were energies traveling through the water as the animals swam around. And these are just stills, but I think also, if it plays, we also have some very interesting video footage of this. And all it was simply with our filter on a small digital camera with a filter in front on video mode, of course. Here comes the film. There's the filter going in front. There's the sea lions. Our little friend. And there just seems to be some fantastic energy coming from the water where they live. So you can have in your pocket an instrument of very great potential research. Now, just to show you, this is a little ordinary picture of a couple of stones at Stonehenge in England. And if you put our filter in front, you can actually see through the stones to the background. We'll see a couple more of those. Next one. Okay, and here, again, the background. Because what it does, it actually can bend light around solid objects. But also, it works the other way. Objects that are invisible, or things that are invisible, it can sometimes make them manifest and show a light recorded picture. Here, for example, I picked up a standing wave between Evie and her granddaughter, Kimberly. This was a standing wave there of light. And she was particularly focused on her grandchild, and I thought this is a lovely time to take an audio picture. And I put the filter in, I couldn't believe this wonderful effect I saw between grandmother and child. And there is the glamorous grandmother as well. Pity about the old bloke. Here we now, sorry to keep on about this, another invention of mine called the Oldfield Microscope. I told you, it's a compulsion I have. I might, when I get a bit older, might get out of the habit. But, okay. I was made a Fellow of the Royal Microscopical Society because of this invention. It's an orthodox scientific call of fame, but I don't want to mention it too much at NEXUS. Don't hold it against me, please. I am still very eccentric. Duncan can confirm that. I want that type of hat, by the way. He's going to get me a bowler one to go with my waistcoat. You know, some men are born on the wrong continent, the wrong country, and some men are born in the wrong century. How's time going? I feel, and I think Duncan feels the same as well. Here we have some microorganisms called protozoa, single cells. Okay, and one thing is they haven't got much colour to them, but our microscopes give them colour and definition. They improve contrast and therefore you see more. It makes the microscope a much more finer research instrument to use. Here we have I first introduced you to Matilda, the slime mould, last year. And I was doing research in making a slime mold bandage because she has a particular appetite for nasty bacteria. Okay? Flesh-eating bacteria and streptococci, pseudomonas, you name it, she has an appetite for it. And she's wonderful. That's almost just a few magnifications. And she has no cells, just flowing cytoplasm. She's a blob of, she's neither animal nor plant, just something in between. And wherever she goes, she starts to absorb detritus matter and dead material. And I've got her to grow on bandages, and let's say we have a particularly nasty infection. The idea is to experiment by applying these bandages to people with very bad infections, and that's another area of research of mine. Okay, lovely. That's Matilda, and that's a blow-up of Matilda, one of these channels. But also with our rendering with our microscope, we can actually show shadows, okay, on a microscopic level. Sorry about the blinking out there. And also makes the possible, that's what an ordinary microscope sees in comparison. You hardly see any detail of what you saw previously. And it also makes the research into microsurgery and manipulation on a micro scale much more finer as well. And we can also retrofit almost any microscope on the planet except an electron microscope, of course, because an electron microscope doesn't use light, it uses electrons. And here we have some live blood cells taken from Dr. Robert Gamble. So you can see what he looks like on the inside, live blood cell analysis. Here he is. And I have to say, his leukocytes, his white blood cells, are very active. And he has very no somatids or parasites or any infection. Very good erythrocyte shapes. That's the red blood cells that carry oxygen, etc. And look at the activity of that white cell there. Absolutely beautiful. If you've got nice active white cells like that, you get an infection, you hardly have the infection for long. But obviously I'm not going to put Robert to the test, but he's always there for his patients. And he always uses natural things. And this is a wasp wing, okay, with my microscope. And this is in an ordinary microscope, and this is with our effect. So actually colour it, almost any colour we want, to show up detail. And one thing I shared with Callum a couple of years back was that I'd noticed that on these wings, on the hairs on the wings were a different shape. And he asked me what they were shaped. I said, well, they were shaped of a spiral. And right away, he knew that as the wings of any flying insect that have the spiral hairs on fly around, they create micro vortices. I don't know if Callum's here, but I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Micro vortices, which create extra lift and less drag on the insect. So we haven't yet, mankind hasn't used this technology for aircraft wings yet, okay? So that's another invention I'm going on to next. If you can get me up in one of those things, of course. Just gonna, next time you see a hairy aircraft, you know that Harry has been up to something, okay? Somehow, you know, they don't let me on some of those wings anymore. It's a very great shame. Especially when I tried to put the old ex-wife's fur coat on it, you know, for experiments. Okay. Here's the before and after. Anyway, another invention of mine, hope I'm not boring anybody, is I've made a microscope without any lenses, without any optics at all, okay? Doesn't use a lens. And we can see up microstructures many, many hundreds and hundreds of times magnification. Actually, we're approaching about 2,000 to 3,000 times magnification of these are microorganisms projected onto my living room wall that you see moving around, and there's not a lens involved. I'm sorry I can't disclose publicly the entire process because there's not a patent application in the pipeline yet. But it's an idea I had many years ago, and have put it into practice, the theory into practice, and we see the organisms. So technically, it's not really a microscope, it's more a special projector. The organisms, for the technical for people amongst you, about 100 microns in diameter. Now this is a Kirlian type effect using lasers underneath my microscope. And this is a colonial algae called Pleurodorina. Anyway, it's a relative of Volvox. That's much easier to say for the biologists among you. And this is what an ordinary microscope sees. And then I bring the laser into play, and it produces a very interesting effect. There we go. We're seeing much more of the energetic structure of these organisms, as well as the microscopic details. We're now going to higher magnification, and we're going to use my laser technique. A second now, will come into play. Here we go. And you can see, shall we say, stimulated emission of energy from the microorganisms themselves. That's the white light. And also the flares, I hope you can see, similar to what were the early Kirlian pictures. We actually also have an ability to fine-tune the laser, so we turn down the power of the laser in a few seconds, and you see actually more details from within the colonies of cells. Starting to fine-tune about now, my memory. Thank you very much. And what we've got here is a couple of new tools, I believe, for microscopy research that could be applied to not just the biological sciences, but also the material sciences. Another little thing that I've invented is a barometric pressure modification device using natural energy. Of course, I was speaking to a Queenslander some time back, and he told me that the coldest winter he ever spent was a summer in London. And for you guys here on Sunshine Coast, you get mostly Australia, you get wonderful, wonderful climate and weather. I know it can be a little bit dry sometimes for the farmers, but I'm working on that up here at the moment for you. It'd be my gift to Australia if I can do it. But most of the time back home, we're especially in the country of experiments we use mainly for bad weather, which was Iceland, not just in Great Britain or Northern Wales for that matter, where all those, we still did experiments in the other places like that. The idea came with an Icelandic colleague many years back, where we found I was trying to land in an aircraft on a small airfield somewhere in Iceland, and the side winds and everything, you had to go around a couple of twice, and there were people screaming, mainly me, and as soon as I got off the aircraft, I asked for a cigarette. I don't smoke, but I asked for a cigarette. And so I decided, when he said, you know, for safety reasons and things, is there any way that out of my mind I could think of a way of safe, localized, very localized weather modification? And I thought about it, came up with a few ideas, and yes, crystals came into it as well. And shortly afterwards, we were able to make some prototypes. And here is some of the results of that work. Anyway, here's the bit of an explanation. Cloudy, deteriorating weather conditions over city centre, well, it's the capital of Iceland actually, Reykjavik. And so we had this sort of deteriorating weather with swirling clouds, sort of low barometric pressure, upping the wind speed, etc. And after about half an hour on a second-story building from my colleague's office, we turned on the machine for half an hour, and suddenly, unpredicted in the weather forecast, a sun spot started to appear in the cloud layer, quite thick cloud layer, nearly 200 feet cloud layer. And within minutes, the influence increases. And that is the before and after. After 1.5 hours comparison, you can see that very thick cloud layer here started to dissipate with our circle of influence, as we call it. And we have repeated these experiments hundreds of times, by the way. And this is just typical of them. This is 4 hours later. Clear skies became very evident. Remember, very dismal, cloudy weather was predicted for the next couple of days. And just clear skies. We even, some years ago, had the weather improvement recorded in a town called Akureyri, and the people recording the barometric pressure and wind speeds were the local police, because they were the ones that had the meteorological instruments, the point of view of safety. So you couldn't get more reliable, shall we say, sources of information and witnesses for your sky experiments that I was doing at the time. Anyway, that's 7 hours later. And here we have the beginning of a beautiful sunset. It's often called the land of the midnight sun. And yes, it's not Hawaii you're looking at there, a Hawaiian sunset, that's Iceland. And, well, shall we say the next day, the exceptionally unexpected good weather made the local papers. And I was really quite chuffed over that, actually. But I didn't take credit. Because you've always got to credit yourself, could be coincidence. You can only take coincidence so far. My old granddad used to say, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, and walks like a duck, son, it's usually a duck. Seems logical. And here we have some video footage for you to look at with our weather modification. And here we have some real-time footage of cloud dispersion. That was already kept much larger before we started. Then we started the video several minutes knowing that we'd hit the right frequency to actually dissolve this cloud before your eyes. Yeah, there we go. Now what I want to do for Australia eventually is to reverse the process. Okay, I have to work on some inverse square laws, and you know, might need a linear accelerator to do it. Not the one as big as CERN's, don't worry about that. I've got concern over CERN's. I'll tell you more about that later. And over here I want to recommend this wonderful book. It's The Secret Life of the Universe, and it's by Amy Corzine, if you want to know more about energy. Very, very good book to start with, and one that's going to go very far indeed. And talking about black holes, here we have a young scientist who, shall we say, I'm friends with, who is a brilliant mind, Dr. Mannion Samantha Lawton, and she has written a book called Punk Science, okay? She's a little bit like that, in a little bit eccentric and very, very brilliant mind. And she talks about the positive influences of forces, especially black holes. Now, I told you a moment ago I had concerns about CERNs. Okay, that's a special collider, okay, of subatomic particles. It encompasses about 3 countries in its travelling distance. And the problem is that potentially, if you were to compare CERNs with an atomic bomb, with the energy potential, the atomic bomb in comparisons to the accelerator would look like a fizzling match, potentially. And I'll tell you why. Because there are concerns that if there's enough energy put into certain juxtapositions and in the particle accelerator with the right magnetic concentration of those collisions, that singularities will be produced. The singularities are miniature black holes. And I know that the critics of this so-called scaremongering say that these black holes will disperse into, from the Hawking fields and what have you. But I have a little, what's the word, the Greeks used to use, fable to tell you, okay? A little story, okay? And any similarities to anybody living or dead is completely coincidental, okay? So you have a professor and his assistant on the peripherals in the laboratory of a huge linear accelerator, which will be nameless, of course. And there was concerns from the assistant to the professor, who was in charge of the experiment, that you know, what happens if they create a black hole, and the professor says, well, there'll be an event horizon, okay, and things will be sucked into the black hole, and you know, things will also freeze on the event horizon. And as he does this, suddenly the professor, as he switches on the accelerator at full power, suddenly finds himself in a singles bar, and he's sitting next to a table of mathematical logs, and suddenly across the distance in this bar he sees a subatomic particle, and she starts to a negative particle, female particle, no, not negative in the female sense, it's in the charge sense, in the polarity sense. And suddenly she approaches the table and suddenly makes a quantum leap up on the table of logs and starts to spin round this magnetic monopole. And, and suddenly the professor says, oh, you're charming, my dear, you're really charming. And she said, thank you, Professor. And she said, do you know what's the difference between the black hole that you've created and love? And he said, no, my dear, I don't. She said, well, your black hole is forever. And he said also, he went on to say, well, as he was eating his spaghetti, which was getting longer and longer at this phase, he said, how will I know, my dear, when I've reached a single point of singularity, mathematically speaking? And the charming subatomic particle said, well, you look through that telescope there, Professor. Do you see it? He said, yes. And look through it, and when you see dark matter coming from Uranus, you'll know you've reached that point. Okay, Mannion, that's one for you, dear. Another thing that we've also investigated is pyramid energy. And the other year we were in Bosnia looking at the energy of their pyramids. Now, these pyramids are even more ancient than the ones in Egypt. And the only difference is they're covered in vegetation. Now, you may think, well, that's a very interesting hill with a pyramid-type shape, but I've seen the excavations going on there, and just outside of Sarajevo. And There's been a whole book written on this that I'm going to promote in a moment. But while we were looking through our PIP system, okay, we noticed that we were not alone. And these UFOs that we saw were using, and they do use pyramids and other lines of force on the Earth to charge up, we believe, their special extraterrestrial vehicles. And this is the book recently written on the secrets of the pyramids revealed, for your reference there, by my Sarajevo friend and also Croatian friends as well. And yes, I am mentioned in the book. Okay, so a little bit biased, but it's a very good read. Okay, and for the technical amongst you, there's lots of formula in there to explain what's going on. I think that's the last book, isn't it? Right. Where's my friend Duncan? Who's my time watcher? Half an hour. Right. Okay. Getting on to the next phase for you. I'm going to demonstrate, I hope you're not getting too bored with this, another invention of mine. Could you put up with it? Use that, okay? I apologise. I will, like some people have to give up cigarettes, I'll have to give up inventing one day, but not yet, okay? And this invention of mine is called ESM, or electro-scanning method, okay? And we utilise it with the electromagnetic fields and the crystal generating box. And this I originally developed from Kurdian photography, which, shall we put a three-dimensional reference field around a human being, but without the high voltage. And we were able to detect this three-dimensional reference field, pressure waves of, with a sound level meter, okay? It also picks up a component of sound energy as well, and many, all my Australian students have been trained in this ESM as it's called. And a lot of them do have our other energy observation device called PIP. Remember, that's the Polycontract interference photography. And if you want to know more, of course, we have leaflets and all sorts of things at my table. But I'd love to ask for a volunteer, if I may.
I'll do that.
Right, okay. Thanks very much indeed. So, if you'd like to come over here. Now, I want to show you the power source on this. It's pen-like batteries in there, by the way.
So it is.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to get you to the umbilical link, which will be the oscillating crystals. I hit a certain frequency, we'll then put a field around you, which I'll try and analyse, okay? Could I just ask you to take the glasses down, because they contain a bit of metal, and I want to look all through your chakras and everything.
I've got Tesla plate.
That would show a surge of energy.
Take it off?
No, keep it on, because I want to show you where the surge of energy takes place. Okay, I'm just going to... Oh, you are?
iPod here.
Oh, you come well equipped, sir. You've got, actually... Duncan, did you arrange this? Thank you.
Another mobile phone.
Two. Hey, Duncan, there's one switched on. It's on standby. Okay, I'll let you off. Duncan, there you go. Thank you so much for doing it. I need you to hold. Nothing happens unless you hold the crystals. I'm sorry. That's the umbilical link, okay? Now you're oscillating. I'm hoping I might be allowed tomorrow to listen to the sound of the crystal skull. We will see. We can only do things by permission. Okay. Let's see what we're getting from
You
this.
have permission.
And you see where that needle is in the oscillating in the zero
Right
end?
in the middle.
Well, that doesn't mean you haven't got any energy. It means you've got normal energy. Okay, just relax the arm a bit. You've got a bit of muscle tension there. Just relax. I'm going to go over the Tesla plate. You see what's happening to the needle? That's going up way over to
Right
the
off
plus,
the scale.
way up right off the scale. That's what I'd expect with a genuine energetic device. Okay, it increases your energy field in the area. In fact, it's creating a vortex, because we've seen these vortex energies with our PIP system. pen. I'm just going to, with your permission, travel around, see what else I can pick up. I apologise for being a bit slow because it's the end of the day. I have to say my students are a bit more slow and methodical, but this system I invented about 30 years ago, so I'm pretty good at it. Yeah. Okay. So, first thing I want to ask is tell me about the accident to the back, down there. Okay? You took the coccyx and here.
I fell out of a plane at 12,500 feet.
That would do it. That would do it. Yes. And now I'm going on to the legs. Yes, indeed. Yeah. I thought actually I was almost fooled. I thought I was going to say motorcycle accident.
This is my old height. This is my new height. Old height.
Yep. New height.
So this
right.
one is longer.
Yep.
And this was all smashed over. Got titanium.
The plates in there, indeed. And I want to ask you something also, trauma to the neck. What happened there?
Well,
That's an interesting one.
I had to drill my skull to get the...
Oh, that would do it, yes. Yeah.
So I woke up 3 hospitals later going, what happened?
Right.
And my sister said, you had a skydiving accident, this is the price you have to pay. And I was pretty brain damaged, so I just said, well, give them my American Express.
Right. Absolutely. And my credit's the same, by the way. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm always brain damaged when I use my credit card. No, seriously. Just between scientists, you understand.
Yeah, right.
It's all going to research, isn't it? That's where our credit cards go.
It's a serious matter.
It is a serious matter.
And you know they say angels fly because they take themselves lightly, so you're doing fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you're not doing too bad, falling from 1,200 feet. But was your parachute... I've done you down by 100%. Oh, no, sorry about that.
Well, actually, I don't know how the canopy opened.
Right. So it was a partial opening, or...
Well, no, the plane was...
Yeah.
I was the last one of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot thought the plane was empty. Didn't see me standing halfway out the doorway.
Oh, my
But I was
goodness.
like, yeah, this. So now my floor goes like that. I fall out, the back wing...
You do realise I'm travelling home in the Airbus, please. I'm very scared of flying. I don't know how really the things stay up there,
Well,
especially without the little hairs on
You
the
don't actually
wings.
stand in the doorway.
You don't stand in the doorway, right? I'm making notes.
So the back wing is pointing down.
Right.
I fall out, obviously. It smacks me in the face, knocks me out.
Jeez.
And now I'm 12,000...
Unconscious.
Tweet, unconscious, yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be here. Amazing. Well, you're meant to be here. Do you
You
actually...
think so?
I do. Do you actually... Have you tried playing the lottery? I think you'd be very lucky. Seriously. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I haven't finished, okay? You do wear glasses for reading or something, and I want to ask you about your left eye, that there's more dioptric correction in your left eye than there is in the right eye.
Oh.
Just recheck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a difference between left and right eye. How long has it been since you've had eyes tested? I'm glad to tell you something you don't know, it's good for me.
Yeah,
Long time?
yeah.
I thought so. Yeah. It's probably something your brain is compensating for. I'm just nitpicking now after all that. Don't worry about it. It's not I'm just nitpicking, you know. I mean, don't get worried. You know. The eye's really good. I'm just looking extra to tell you. And you had something like an impacted wisdom down there that was a bit tough to get out, or it's still there, causing you trouble.
They yanked it.
They yanked it, okay. They were a bit rough with you after that air thing
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Actually, I tried to reach the dentist's testicles at the time.
Well, you saw my Orbs earlier, you know. I want you to know, when you see balls, just think of me, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think, if it's all right with Duncan, the organiser, I think we should give also the ladies a chance to get up here. And that young lady, that's the first hand I saw come up. I'm not being biased. Please do. What's your first name? Mishanka, thank you. Thank you, Mishanka. Okay, and I want you to hold that for me. Okay. I'm just going to get a bass reading there. It's a little finer because you're a different frequency to everybody else. No, to Well, you are, because it's a unique frequency. So we have the ability with our equipment to tune into that frequency and get the rough harmony. By the way, I am still always eternally grateful to my old mentor, Bruce Cathy, ladies and gentlemen. And if it wasn't for his books and the knowledge I've got from those early books, Harmonic 33, 288, etc., I wouldn't have the frequencies around to be able to do the research of anything I've been able to show you today, including the photographic work, because that always uses light harmonics as well. Hey, please, a round of applause for Bruce. Good on you, Bruce. There's so many researchers like me doing this sort of, well, yeah, it is off the beam work, exciting work, and if it wasn't for you producing the numbers, we just wouldn't be able to do it, truly. Anyway, sorry, young ladies, to interrupt the process. Nice secondary presence life form. Quite active, you know. Yeah, yeah. They say boys are more active and kick more if they're going to be footballers and things like that. Absolutely lovely. But young ladies, something you'll have to watch out for is circulation to your legs. Okay, you didn't have perfect. Is it right to talk? Right? And I'm not making, of course, any kind of medical diagnosis. I'm looking at the energy field, of course, and the energy of the legs before you got pregnant. The peripheral circulation energy wasn't at its best. You understand?
Yep.
Cold feet is the I've seen the secret there. Cold feet. Okay, and also I want to ask, what happened to one of these toes here? I think it's the toe there. What happened with old injury?
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of a bump in it as well. Can I go on? Oh, no, baby's absolutely lovely, by the way. Maybe next year, if I get invited back, of course, after this, I might see something in your arms. Will you be here? I hope you will. Next time. That's the date that I want to see the baby. Right, you are. Right. Excellent kidneys, by the way. And you don't smoke. Very clean lungs. This is almost getting boring. I do apologise, but healthily so. You understand? Healthily boring. But I do want to, and I am picking up something from the past. Okay, and it looks to me like a neck strain, almost like a whiplash type injury that you've had in the past. Okay, and it's just about here. Okay, can you think of at a time when your neck was jolted, a sporting accident, car? It's often sore in that spot. Okay, it looks it's a very old echo to me on the meter, and I think it's of many years duration. Understand? Okay, and I want to ask you, are you okay for? Sorry, you should have brought up a chair. Are you okay for standing? I know that pregnancy isn't an illness, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a male chauvinist. I mean, okay, I apologise for the John Wayne films I did look at when I was a little boy, and I got a few ideas that have held me in good stead all my life, actually, but that's another story. But the other thing I want to talk to you about is digestion. Okay, it can be sensitive, and you do have allergies. You have to avoid certain foods. Okay, I've seen that from the thymus. Something you must avoid during pregnancy. You're a cheese fan or something. You are, aren't you? You're Dutch, okay. But you're very careful with the energy of your, I just want to recheck. Yeah, the gallbladder. Okay, during this time of change in your body. Okay, just be careful of the animal fats. And
Goat's cheese is okay.
oh, goat's cheese, fine. It's more the processed stuff. And, you know, it's like avoid the water with fluoride in it at all costs. Things of that nature, okay. I mean, Australia, you know, you surprise me sometimes. This is a country of freedom. Don't let the draconian powers, you know, take away and etch away your freedom, you know, especially the water you drink, you know. You're not too good for that. I want to be living here one day anyway. It's got a pot back in the UK years ago. very nice ankles. What absolutely lovely energy. Oh, no, I mean that in the nicest way. Husbands in the audience, I apologise for being familiar. However, it's just that certain times of pregnancies, ankles can swell, and I was looking for something called oedema. Okay, that's water or something. You've got no signs of that whatsoever. Fine, healthy heart. I'm going to stop there and just wish you a very good term, as it will be. Okay.
No cheese.
Oh, soft cheeses. Soft cheeses and organic, young lady. Baby will thank you for it one day. And maybe one day me when it starts to talk. My pleasure. Thank you. How are we doing for time, Duncan? Oh my goodness, right. I better get on to the next thing. Whew. Almost done 30 years. Wait a second, guys. That goes off. Okay, that's just typical of what we can do. We're also going to be, pleased to say, people have been asking, when are you, Dr. Harry, going to be running new courses for us Aussies down here for the crystals and the ESM technology and everything? Well, I'm very pleased to say that we'll be back here again, May at the latest, with new equipment by then. And it's for you, Australia. I want you to know that. Security. Oh, sorry, Duncan. It's just that at the end, I'm nearly finished. In fact, it might be my total end. But security. Would you have a large knife by any chance, sir? No. Thank you. Much indeed. I also want to mention at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, I also do children's parties and weddings, just to fill in, you know. Now here we have another invention of mine, and I'm going to put it here. I better remove some of my clothing. Ladies, do beg your pardon. It's all in the name of science, you understand. Okay. Okay, Grandpa, keep the watch very safe there. And I'm not going to keep you too long in suspenders, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, who said that? It wasn't, oh dear, it wasn't a lady. Darn it. Just my luck. Okay. Now, I'm just going to remove this very delicate apparatus there. Now, you may say, what's that's it. What's Harry up to here? Well, another necessity for invention was I am sick to death of seeing knife crime in the news all the time back in the UK and Europe. And it seems that you've got kids killing kids and teenagers killing kids with knives and other things. And rather than bring in the draconian laws that at the end of the day causes disrespect and loss of freedom to the normal community, we have to talk about protection. When I was a young man, I just got my Fieldcraft badge in the 1950s, and yes, ladies, I was a Boy Scout. Just imagine me in those little short pants. Well, perhaps not. I had knobby lees in them days. I remember I got my sheath knife. I was so proud from our leader. Nice presentation, badge and everything. And walked into the newsagent with this strapped on my leather belt, and the newsagent there said, "Oh, that's a nice knife you got there, Harry. Can I have a look at it?" And there was two old ladies in the shop, and they said, "Oh, you're a Boy Scout." And I said, I took out my knife. Where is it? Like that. Showed it to the newsagent. The old ladies passed it round. "Well done, young man. Just be careful you don't cut yourself." Not today. They would send out for the SWAT team to come and get that little Boy Scout to show them their knife. But anyway, I hope this is a real knife. I just want to prove that. Yeah, that's a real knife. Hang on. Yeah, I'll use the thin one. By the way, at this stage, I want to say that I take on full responsibility. Sorry.
At this stage of the experiment, I want to publicly announce I'm taking full responsibility for this experiment in the name of science. But just to mention that Greg's fingerprints are on the knife. Local constabulary if anything should go wrong. And Evie, you know, if anything should go wrong, you will look after the dog. Man has to have his priorities. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. There's many of ex-wife who would like to see this. There is a lady leaving there. Are you squeamish about like the young lady? Wait, die. Oh, good. He's not wanting me today. This invention is, I'm proud to tell you, is being taken up by a textile manufacturer.
Microscope.
Sorry about this, but I've just been stabbed in the heart, haven't I? I'm proud to tell you, and I will finish now on that sharp note, Duncan, that invention is being taken up by a textile manufacturer in the United Kingdom in the future. And it will be impregnated into jackets, clothing, and various other things. It also is self-repairing. Self-repairing, non-reactive body armour. And another little invention I thought I'd end with. And of course, as far as I'm concerned, it's for Australia as well. But you guys are pretty sensible with your weapons, I'm pleased to say. And on that note, I will, God bless you, Nexus, and you'll see me around my stand for the next few days. Thank you, everybody.
Can you hear me in the back? I was going to say, thank you, Harry, that was very nice of you. That was a fortnight joke, 2 weeks. Okay, we now have a dinner break, so we've got a 1.5 hour break to go and get refreshed, relaxed, and come back in here. But before he goes, please give Harry another big warm welcome. Thank you, Harry. All right, I'll see you in an hour and a half. Thank you.